And I call on Mr. Riddick to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Riddick. And I call for Mr. Waller to give a certification of the closed meeting.
Resolution of certification of the closed meeting of April 11th, 2019 pursuant to Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended.
I so move. Second.
Board members will please vote. Motion carried.
The next order of business is the approval of the agenda. This is an action item.
Madam Chair, I move for the approval of the agenda as presented. Second.
Board members will please vote. Motion carried.
Next item, public speakers on agenda topics. Ms. Marie Walls with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office.
Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to speak briefly on the school board proposed policy 10-182. Ultimately, what this policy sets to establish is some rules in which police officers can interact with students within our public school system. As many of you may be aware, our police department has policies in place that require them, prior to initiating contact with a suspect at school, to attempt to contact their parents. I'm going to try to have my comments reference suspects because ultimately that's what the policy is deemed to cover. Now, when you look at the policy, it talks about the officer arriving at school, telling the school personnel why they're there, announcing whether it's a suspect, a victim, or a witness, and then having the administration bring the student in, notify whether the parents have been contacted. If not, then have the administration participate in the interview, albeit a silent participation. That creates a problem both for the Commonwealth Attorney's Office as well as the police department, because ultimately what it will do is potentially make school personnel witnesses in a case. Now, Mr. Waller responded to the letter that the Commonwealth Attorney's Office sent, and it talked about the Grog case. And I'm not going to get into too many legal principles, but the Grog case was a case that happened in Florida. A juvenile was down there. An arrest warrant was given by the Fairfax County Police Department, and he was given a public defender in Florida, and he was questioned about a grand larceny. When he had the public defender down there, Virginia personnel came down and started interviewing him about a murder that occurred in Fairfax. He confessed. Even though he had a public defender, the public defender was not there. He was extradited back to Virginia, found guilty, and the confession was upheld. But Grog was decided much under Florida law and not Virginia law. To be clear, there is no constitutional right to have a parent present during an interview, although the police department tries to do that in all cases. And my office represents the city, the citizens of Suffolk. We do not represent the police department, and they can speak of their own accord. But often, our legal principles are commingled. What I'm suggesting, because recently there was a House bill and a Senate bill that was offered on interviews of children at school, seizures of children at school, and suppression related to those issues. Now, those two particular bills, the House bill and the Senate bill, which was Senate Bill 1551, talked about an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding between the schools and the police department. That failed, so it didn't pass the legislature. But what did pass was Senate Bill 1214 and House Bill 1733. And that bill establishes the Virginia Center for schools and campus safety to create a memorandum of understanding between the schools that utilize resource officers, which Suffolk does, and this legislative body. What I would suggest as a prudent course of action may be for us to talk, the police department, the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, school board members, and more importantly, the school administrative staff, to find out if what we have being offered is in play with the MOU, because the MOU will be statewide, and we would have to take a vote on it. That law is going to go in effect July the 1st. It was already signed by the governor, but they have not established the ideal MOU for the entire state of Virginia. At this point, my understanding is the police department has reached out to the administrative offices last year when an MOU was offered. My understanding is they were not given a response and an opportunity to sit down. We reached out to Mr. Waller and Dr. Whitley. I received one phone call back after 6 phone calls, but unfortunately I was not in when Dr. Whitley called. I think we may, if we can sit down and address these issues, maybe come to a resolution. The concern of the Commonwealth, because we all work hand in glove together, is that we don't create a rule for the city of Suffolk that doesn't protect everybody's interests, including the students. Now, there were some sites about different localities around us and what they have in place, but there's 133 different school systems within Virginia, and probably a handful was cited.
1 minute remaining.
Thank you, ma'am. My concern is this: if an officer shows up at a school and they ask to speak to a student and the principal follows some procedure that's in place and says, no, you can't talk to that student, that potentially could be viewed as an obstruction of justice. And understand that no one wants to get into that dialogue where we become not partners in education, where we become opposed to each other. That doesn't help the students, it doesn't help the police, and it doesn't help my office. What I'm suggesting we do is perhaps table that particular section until we can talk. We may absolutely have the same outcome, but nothing ever comes of poor communication but poor viewpoints. From good communication, we have good principles that protect my office,
15
your
seconds.
office, and the school board. So that would be the Commonwealth Attorney's suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walls, for your comments. And now we have reports by the superintendent.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. At this time, I'm going to call to the podium. I'm trying to find my, I apologize. Let's see. We have our art teachers to present, and we're going to call the art teachers up to share with you acknowledgement of the school board. Ladies.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Lisa Morrison.
And I'm Cynthia O'Hara.
And we are pleased to speak with you tonight on behalf of the Suffolk Public Schools art teachers. Walk into any Suffolk Public Schools art room or art classroom, and you will find students engaged in any number of art media, such as painting, crafting, drawing, and sculpting. You can see examples of student artwork displayed at several art shows throughout the year. Art teachers show student works at Peanut Fest, Suffolk Art Gallery, Suffolk Center for Cultural Arts, the Old Dominion Tri-Cities Center, at the school board, and in the schools. In March, Youth Art Month, we host a free art festival at Danceman River High School for students and their families. Where students and their families can enjoy make and take art stations and art demonstrations. What you may also see when you walk into an art classroom is math. When students learn to measure and draw lines with a ruler or divide materials into specific fractions. They will learn and use science when they study color and light, or phases of matter while learning about the ceramic process. Students will investigate history by learning about the different periods of art and how art reflects the times in which people live. Art teachers also integrate classroom SOLs into the art room to specifically reinforce as needed by the classroom teacher. In the classroom, students solve problems with creativity and high-level thinking skills. as Suffolk Public Schools art teachers. We, as Suffolk Public School art teachers, can do all of this because of your continued support. And for this, we thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm no artist, but I have a great love for art. And I know you do a tremendous job. And I'm going to speak for myself, being on the board for 10 years. I appreciate all those beautiful things you have given me over the years. I keep them in a little case at home of mementos, and keep doing that. Art is very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One of the major things that I certainly appreciate is the art teachers help coordinate the superintendent's art show, which is coming up April 23rd. So thank you for all that you do, and we know you do so much for our school division. Thank you and our students. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next, we have the playground replacement upgrade.
Yes, Mr. Napier is going to share with you. You may recall we have had extensive conversation about our playground equipment and trying to make certain that we can replace it and upgrade it and developing a plan. And what Mr. Napier will share with you today is pretty much the plan that we have provided funding is available. Mr. Napier.
Evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Evening.
In the past, we've had many discussions about many facilities things. HVAC equipment, buildings themselves, all of those things. We think we have reached a point now where we would like to turn at least some of our attention towards playgrounds. And as you know, we do have playgrounds at all of our elementary schools. They are not all equal. We realize that, but we want to look at that and we want to try to do something about that at our earliest convenience. So some of the things that we have already looked at, age of the equipment at all of those buildings, size of the playground versus how many students attend that school, safety issues that have been identified by either our own staff, and by the way, we do have a part-time employee that works for my department, and one of his functions, in fact, probably his greatest function, is to do repair work on playgrounds. He does hardware, swing seats, things that we can do in-house. We also, as you know, we built a fabulous playground at Florence Bowser. We thank Mr. Hines for that. But Mr. Hines' consultant also went one step further, and they went out and they looked at the other playgrounds at our other buildings, and they provided us with a report of what they saw and what they thought that we should do. We have also considered that report in our discussions. We also solicited feedback from our principals. We sent out a survey. They filled it out, basically telling us what they thought they needed on their playgrounds and what they thought about their current situation regarding playgrounds, and they have provided that information to us. So based on all of that, these are some of the things that we have found up to this point. We do have some replacement of hardware that needs to be done. That's been ongoing for a couple of 3 months now by Suffolk personnel. Replacement of swing seats and those types of things. We're also doing that work in-house. We also currently, in fact, work started today on a $33,000 purchase order with Miracle Recreation. They're going out to 3 of our playgrounds and doing some repair work for us that we cannot do in-house. We have problems with some of the decking, and some of this equipment is very old. Some of these playgrounds are as old as the school buildings that they service, with the exception of Booker T. And even though Booker T's playground is not as old as the building, Booker's T playground is as old as the old building, if that makes any sense. There are protective coating problems that we have with some of the decking, slides holding water, those kinds of things, post caps missing. These are maintenance items that we are looking into doing as quick as we can do. A lot of our playgrounds, I know you've heard a lot of talk about inclusive playgrounds. We have one, Florence Bowser. We'd like to do a little bit about that as well if we could. So those are some of the things that we have identified up to this point. And we've had a number of discussions, and we've begun to prioritize based on the things that we do know at this point. And we plan to do the things that are listed there. We want to replace equipment. We also want to upgrade some equipment that's already at those playgrounds. I'm not going to say they're going to be totally inclusive, but at a minimum, we would like to include at least one inclusive piece of equipment at every playground. There's a lot of discussion these days about inclusive playgrounds, and I am certainly no expert in that area, but we want to do what we can do in that regard. So considering all of that, this is the prioritized order that we would like to submit in terms of either replacing or upgrading or both. We'd like to start with Elephants Fork, move to Booker T. Washington, Kilby Shores, Nansemond Parkway, and Elephants Fork, Kilby, and Nansemond. Those are the three oldest elementary schools that we still have in service, so it makes sense there. Booker T was renovated back in the mid to late 90s, but their playground was already there before that renovation was done. So we're kind of counting that in as one of the older playgrounds. McBin Jr., a few years back, we did add some equipment there. It was actually equipment that was brought from schools that had been closed. And while it did help a little bit at the time, we don't think it went far enough, and we'd like to do some more there as well. Oakland Elementary and Northern Shores. And you know about all of the discussions about the inclusive playground at Northern Shores, so we have put asterisks by that. What we do, I think, would depend on how that group in that end of the city moves forward with their plans in conjunction with whatever we end up doing to the building itself. There are no dates assigned to these. The reason for that, we don't have funding yet. So once we do have a funding vehicle, or we are told we have a certain amount of money, then we can begin to put dates on this depending on when those funds would be received. But that's the order that we would like to begin. Estimated costs. We are estimating at this point $250,000 per playground on average. Some playgrounds will require more equipment, more grounds upgrade than others, but we're looking at a number here that's going to fall somewhere in the middle. So we're thinking, you can do a lot of playground upgrade with $250,000, and it wouldn't just all be equipment. There are access considerations, there are grounds, walkways, things that have to be done other than just putting equipment on a playground. So we're including all of that in that number. Funding sources, and we just kind of, thought these would be good ones. Capital funding through the city, we may be able to get some that way. Operating funds through SPS, which we have done in the past, and then grant funding as it becomes available. Now, I can tell you that Mr. Hines in our purchasing office has applied for 2 playground grants at this point. I don't think, do we have a date yet, Anthony, and when we might know something?
One of them will do probably by May.
Okay.
And one is about 90 days.
So we started the process on trying to get a little bit of money to make some of this happen. So given all of that, we would like to move forward as soon as possible with these playground upgrades. We do think it's important. We do realize that our students, they enjoy their playgrounds now. We would like to give them something that they could enjoy even more. Any questions about any of that?
Before we get into questions, if you'll go back one slide, I want to spend just a little bit more time on the funding sources. This will be the first time that we actually included in the capital funding our capital improvement plan, but that is the goal, to suggest that we include that in the plan as we develop that each year. In fact, the city manager and I are looking at dates, because you may recall during the joint meeting we talked about working together and talking about the CIP, so that will be a part of the conversation as well. As Mr. Napier said, the operating funds, that's basically how we've funded playground upgrades in the past. You may recall you have a budget that's been approved that has, I believe, $68,000 in it that will go towards Elephants Fork as the first one on the priority list. And then the grant funding, I'm really excited about that. Certainly pleased that Mr. Hines came to me with the 2 grants that he found. I know we've had conversation about hiring a grant writer, because there's money out there that we possibly can tap in on and use it for things that we need. So this is, I think, a good plan. As Mr. Napier said again, we don't have dates, but we do have that prioritized list, and I think that's the major piece, is making certain that we realize who needs what first, and making certain that we kind of address all needs, basically, as we get the funding. Questions?
I'm glad you said access, because if I remember right on that plan, it wasn't an issue up there, but thank you for saying access, because that was a common theme when they came in, is that there was not, for the Citizens with the Disabilities Act, that there wasn't access, and so I'm really glad you're going to include that when we...
Well, and there's two components to that. It used to be ADA compliant used to mean you could either get from the building or get from the parking lot to the playground itself. If you could do that, you were compliant. Now it's gone beyond that to a point where it's not just getting from your car or from your class to the playground, it's how can you move around in the playground itself. So all of that has to be considered.
Right.
It's a little bit more money, but it's worth it in the end.
Right, so, great, thank you. I'm glad access. And then the groundwork, because of course at Elephant's Fork, we've got asphalt, and that, would be non-compliant. And I hope because I think groundwork is expensive too, but certainly having, according to the, the recommendations for playgrounds, the groundwork is important too. So, and I think you did, that was mentioned.
Right.
So that's great.
And it is, but on the topic of the hard surface playground, one of the guidelines from VDOE is that we actually have a hard surface playground, which is why they're there to begin with. It may be something that we don't want to entirely abandon, but maybe we can work around so that it's not integrated to the point where it's right in the actual playground.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. And because I know there's a water drainage problem there on that.
There is,
particular...
and we did something a little bit unique at Florence Bowser where we have an underground drainage system under that playground. But part of that was because we had that pond over there where we could allow it to drain too. So our options may be limited as far as drainage in some of our locations, but we can certainly do what we can.
Good. And could you consider a safety component of an outdoor camera that would face the playground? I think, there's always concern that someone who is not a parent that should have access to a child or whatever, a playground sometimes can be a easy place to try to take a child that shouldn't be taken by a relative or parent. So maybe if you could at least include looking into what would it take with you about having, as we do these upgrades one at a time, look into the safety of having a camera that's directed towards a playground. I'd like to include that.
And Mr. Littlefield works all kinds of magic. I'm sure he can make that happen.
Yay. Thank you. Excellent. Well, that's very encouraging. Yes.
Any other questions, concerns?
Thank you. I have one. I'm sorry.
Oh, excuse me.
Have you already provided the logistics? Because I see you said the size based on the population. So have you already did that with each school of how much equipment you need?
We have not. What we would like to do when we reach a point where we actually have funding is utilize a consultant to help us figure out exactly what we should do and how we should do it. We don't have playground experts on staff. Mr. Hines is in contact with some that have a great deal of expertise, and hopefully we can utilize their expertise to help us determine exactly how we need to move forward with each playground. We don't want it to be the same necessarily. We may shoot for some kind of uniformity across playgrounds as far as equipment, but each site has its own unique characteristics. Each population is a different size. All of that plays into how we might proceed when it actually comes time to build a playground or upgrade a playground.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Napier. Next, we have technology update.
Yes, it's listed as an update, but as you well know, during our last meeting, we actually had a technology update. I think there were some additional questions, so Mr. Littlefield is certainly available to answer any questions regarding the update that was presented last month.
So I apologize for not being here last month, and so I looked through your PowerPoint and listened to what you said. I just have a couple questions. The Epsilon projectors, those new projectors?
Interactive projectors.
Interactive, right. Well, first let me say, it was a great update. I mean, finding out all that we have. And would those interactive be under the label projectors?
We included those as room equipment. I actually have that information right here. So the interactive projectors, let me pull that up. They were included in that count as
And
classroom.
that's 709, the projectors, is that what they were under?
Yep, we actually have two classifications of projectors. Some are mobile in the what we call MPC
Right.
cards. I believe you probably remember those. And then the installed projector. So that would be anything that is physically installed in the classroom, and
Okay.
they were included in that count. Yes, ma'am.
So I hope that we could think about, like, we have a capital improvement plan. It would be nice if we now had a technology improvement plan, that we could have like a 3-year strategy, how we're going to add new equipment, just like like who's next on the list and who's next, and based on, academic needs, like where should these interactive boards be going, what kinds of curriculum, what kind of discipline can best use them.
We're currently over spring break actually installing interactive projectors we have John F. Kennedy, John Yates, Mac Ben, and I believe Booker T. Washington. They're actually being funded out of some funds we have for this year. And
Okay.
there's another round coming. So there's about 100 projectors going in at this time.
Great. So sometime maybe we could, and I would like you to work with some teachers on that, ask for teacher input, and ask where, what types of rooms for the high schools, when we get to other high schools, that teachers would be part of where they go in next.
Actually, teachers are a part of it. Generally, for these locations that were just named, the directors talked with the principals, and in turn, the principals talked with teachers and had a variety of ways on deciding which schools and which classrooms would actually get those particular interactive boards. And primarily, it's based on interest, it's based on what they're teaching, it's based on utilization as well. So as far as teachers being included, they certainly are included now as far as helping decide where they're going to be located.
Okay. I had a question about the Follow Me printing. So you said 10 schools currently have Follow Me printing. I guess part of a question is, it would seem to me that Follow Me printing, so for those of you who don't know, in these 10 schools, teachers are given a limit of how much they can print per month. And now it's been attached to a money amount.
Actually, all schools have the capability of quotas in place. So currently, the cost for printing is a school allocation. Ms. Forsman can attest to that. The schools that went to Follow Me, the cost is being paid by the district.
Correct. Who decides at each school?
The cost or the amount?
No,
allocation?
who decides the amount that teachers get for printing?
That is a decision that's been made by the principal of each building.
I know for a fact that principals have not included teachers in that decision. And there is not an equitable distribution based on differentiation of which teachers need more. So if a teacher has 30 students or 40 students total versus a teacher that has 150 students total, they both get the same amount of printing. That is not equitable, and it's not working. It's causing a lot of angst. And I think that we have to look at differentiating that. I don't know if you're familiar with a DBQ. Does that mean something to you? A database question. So a DBQ at the high school level might take, for a test, might take 2 pages just for the question. If you're counting copies, you can't even make 3 tests for your class of 100-some students because you run out of paper. I mean, this is a lot of angst for our teachers in Suffolk, and they can look in other places and say, I read it, that a teacher went from Suffolk to Chesapeake and said, where do I turn in a printing form for paper? And they said, what are you talking about? So I don't understand this clamp down on paper, and I look at the monies in the audit, and I just don't understand where we're coming up with this. And it feels to me that this is a money issue, evidently, so it's finance. It's a curriculum issue, and it seems that whenever we went to this system of moderating and making teachers have only a certain amount of printing, it seems that was a policy change from when I started. You printed what you want. And I know it just doesn't make sense the way it's working right now. It doesn't make sense in terms of differentiating for teachers' needs, and I don't know who's making the decisions. I mean, truly at Kings Fork High School, 1 month it was you get $40 per month, and the next month, sorry, you only get $35. And then the policy was started in the middle of the year. That just drives teachers bonkers. So somehow we have to try to respect teachers' needs. I didn't mind if it was 1,000 copies. I don't like putting a money value. It's like you're trying to make them feel guilty for spending money. I know it's not their own, but when you tie money to it, it's very frustrating for teachers. They are not able to print what they need for their curriculum.
Well, I'll say it's two things. I do think that money is an issue. I don't think we'll ever get to the point where it's unlimited copying and unlimited usage of the printer. But there's also this piece of attempting to encourage and inspire teachers to not use so many papers and to have students more actively engage. And I'm not suggesting that that's the case for all situations, because there's certain times that you do need printed copies. I certainly understand that. Each building level primarily makes the decision, and I can't say how and who's all involved with that, but we certainly can explore to find out as far as how many copies they receive and if indeed it's meeting their needs versus whether it's impacting the curriculum and things of that nature. So that's certainly something that we can explore, but
again, I hope that teachers get to be involved in this discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want it to be the principal asks 1 or 2 teachers and then says, well, I asked 1 or 2, or this needs to be a discussion because they're very, very frustrated. And I wished we could, certainly districts around us have unlimited copies. And it's frustrating that differentiation is a big deal in the classroom, but then when it comes to applying it administratively, differentiation isn't there for these kinds of things. So you can see the frustration and the angst. They're to differentiate for their students, but we're not differentiating for their needs in the classroom. So I hope you can see, I hope we can do something, and it really needs to happen, because they're in the midst of a great amount of angst right now, and I think we got to relook at these policies that seem to come out of nowhere and then come in the middle of the year. I don't care for that.
The completion of the project occurred in the middle of the year, and that's just a matter of when we could do it.
Yeah.
As far as a policy, it's not a policy. And the principal has the ability, if he wanted to create a department-level print category, he could certainly do that.
Just hope teachers are involved in that decision, because they're the ones in the classroom. They know their tests. They know what they have to do, and we need teachers involved. And then, can you tell me, just one more question. The DVD situation. Teachers arrived back at school in September. They had DVDs plugged into their curriculum, put the DVD in their desktop, and nothing. It would seem to me that sometime during pre-service, teachers would have been notified, by the way, you do not have access to play a DVD from your desktop. It's just frustrating, very, very frustrating. What happened that we can't do?
So that is not a Suffolk Public Schools issue. That is a Microsoft issue. So Microsoft made a change in their operating system where they no longer pay the fee to allow DVDs to be played. There's actually a licensing fee. Microsoft abandoned it in last spring, a year ago. It was applied in an update. As we updated the computers, it rolled out. It's something out of our control.
So could we have paid the fee?
The fee is over $15 per computer.
Okay, but you could have at least come and asked the board, or said it is going to cost us this much. And again, the communication, then say that. We decided we can't, afford this, and let teachers know. We're trying to retain teachers. That has to be a goal.
Well, I think, certainly I agree with you as far as retaining teachers. But I also will say this, that I'm not sure what DVD is being played. I do know with our partnership with WHRO and some of our instructional online videos that I would like to think that there might be a different source. Now, how it was communicated, could it have been communicated better? Perhaps it could have. But we have to be careful with any teacher bringing in any DVD and playing it. It really should be something that's been pre-approved.
We have over 1,000 DVDs in our library that have been purchased for curriculum, and now those are just obsolete.
Well, again, $15 per computer is not something that I could see where we could put in the budget at this particular time. But we can certainly look at it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Littlefield. Next, we have a financial update with Ms. Forsman.
Yes, Ms. Forsman. I think there are some questions regarding the audit or other financial questions.
First question. So we get audits for the individual schools. Do we get an audit for downtown?
Ma'am, the auditors are retained by the city. The city auditors come in, they're the same auditors that do our schools. They audit our records thoroughly, and all of the results of that audit show in the city's CAFR that they do, their comprehensive annual financial report.
So that could be given to us as well at the time that we're given.
Certainly, it's part of it's published in December usually.
Okay. So and right now that would be online?
Yes, it's online.
It's online for the downtown funds?
Yes, ma'am.
And that audit? Okay. The school audits. I noticed that Lakeland High School has a line item for, I lost the word, allocated funds. It would seem to me from my conversations with you that every school should have a line item of allocated funds. And can you go over just briefly, allocated funds are given to the schools based on what?
Based on number of students.
The number of students.
Yes, ma'am.
And when is that money given to the school district?
80% is released in August and the remaining 20% in January.
Okay, so that 80% of allocated funds city gives to you, not to you personally, but
It's in the budget every year. It's under the programs, the general education program. So each level, elementary, middle, and high, has a line item that says school allocations, and that total dollar amount for all three levels is divided by the number of students enrolled at June 1st. John, is that June 1st is when you give us that? I believe it's June 1st. It's a June enrollment because we
Right.
don't have the ability to give them something in August when the enrollment's fluctuating so much. So we use the last enrollment data that we have, and it's divided by, the total budget is divided by the total number of students and then multiplied by the number of students at that particular school, and it is sent out at 80% in August.
so sent out. Explain that to me.
We cut a check to the school from the central office and send it to them, and they receipt it in the school activity funds.
So, like under Lakeland, it would seem to me that we would have a line item that says allocated funds.
Each school has an instructional accounts line. It starts for the high schools, it starts after the general accounts, and they have each department or each level.
No,
that
but
they
just an
give to.
allocated, because then once you allocate it, then the principals decide how it gets split up.
Correct.
But I'd like to see that total amount that comes from you when you cut that check of allocated funds to the school. And then from there, it gets split up, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I think that would be a good way of tracking and knowing the amount of money that is going to each school under allocated funds. And you've indicated that you cut that check when?
August?
But somehow it doesn't seem like the funding gets to the school. The teachers hear a variety, well, we don't get our money till October, we don't get it till September, but it seems to me that they get it,
Goes out in August, goes directly to them.
and it goes directly to them. So, again, a little communication differentiate problem here, but I'd really like to see that. I really think for tracking funds, we need to see the total amount allocated for each school as a line item, and then from there, it's going to get distributed somehow by someone.
Well, the principal and the
principal.
leadership team.
Yeah, I
meet, and
think we have to keep in mind that the principals have been assigned to the building to lead the building. Each principal has a leadership team that helps in making those decisions, those types of decisions, as far as how money is going to be allocated in some cases. I'm not of the position of telling principals exactly how much to spend and where. I have faith and trust them that they're going to do what's needed. If a teacher sees that he or she does not have what's needed to run their instructional program, my expectation is for them to have a conversation with the principal or member on the leadership team so that they can convey that. And schools do that. They do it often. Or if it's still not enough or they still have concerns, it oftentimes will come to the school, the Superintendent's Advisory Council. And we've addressed it there when we've increased allocation, which we've done recently. Was it last year, this year?
Last year and this year.
Okay.
I don't think, just a minute, I don't think it's how it, right now, I'm not concerned with how it gets distributed. I'm concerned that I think there needs to be a tracking of what is the total amount of money that that school is receiving for allocated funds each year.
I think that's what she just said.
I have that. That's what we do each year.
I think she has that information
Yes, ma'am.
because if you
But-
write a check, excuse me, if you write a check,
Right.
you do have a record of the check that you wrote.
Absolutely.
So
We
there
have
is
an
no
actual
question
total.
about how much the check is because we have a record of the check. Is that not true?
That's
So
true.
that's taken care of.
Absolutely.
Is that-
we keep,
is
we
that
keep
correct?
track of what we send in August and what we owe them in January and a total for the year, because then we send a letter. Right now, we've just sent our letter out through a superintendent's memo telling them that everything has to be done and spent or encumbered by June 3rd or come back to the school board office, because we have to have time to receive it back, if we receive it back, or to look at the report and see what they've encumbered and make sure that we look at that and that it's an actual encumbrance. It's not just them sending us something, and make sure that we're not going to pull the money back to the school division.
I have
that they
no
have
doubt
spent.
that you're keeping track of that. I just want it in that report.
Which report?
The-
Audit
the-
report?
Yeah, the audit report, in terms of, I want it in that audit report so anyone can see the total amount of money allocated to the school was. Now, I know they can FOIA it, they can ask you,
Right.
but there seems to me that for the public,
Right.
there should be a way of knowing what was the total amount of tax allocated funds coming from the various places, wherever it comes from, what was the allocated funds to that school? And Lakeland High School has that line item, do they?
I was trying to look at Lakeland because I didn't see one that said allocated funds exactly. I saw the instructional accounts where it's allocated out, but I did not see, hold on, let me get back to
I
it.
just want you to consider that. I think that the public should know what is the total amount of allocated funds going to the schools this year without having to dig deep and FOIA it. I
would-
think that should be information.
And it may need to be published on our website or something like that.
Okay.
Because we don't produce this report. This is produced by auditors.
Okay.
So they're following their formats. We can certainly, I mean, the information's there. We can certainly just put it out.
Publish it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Okay, one more thing, please. The salary scale, and I asked that all of us would get that. The salary scale, to me, for the first 8 years, 7 years, is not something that, I don't know how it got so messed up, but there is a great disparity between the steps from the second year to the 7th year. Am I correct?
Are.
Okay. So I'm concerned, why would a young teacher stay in Suffolk when, first of all, 1 year between years 2 and 3, there's a 0% increase. And then it's minimal, it's 0.34, 0.17, 0.43, and finally 0.93%. That doesn't make sense to me. And I think it needs to be fixed.
We're working on it.
You're working on it.
4 years ago, before we started our paying classification plan, 6 steps had this exact same cost. So 6 steps had the exact same price for teachers. That was a result of us going through the recession and raises not given and things not happening. So whenever that happens, while teachers move up on the scale, the whole scale goes backwards when you don't give raises or you don't give cost of living raises. So when the paying classification plan was put in place, there was some small differentiation put between those steps, and each year we tried to improve upon that a little bit, but you have to be careful because you can add enough to it that that person on step 6 would make more than step 7. So you have to be very careful how you do it and what you put in between steps, because you got to realize we have people on each of these, and if you try to put a little bit more on the next step down, you're going to cause that person to make more than a person on step 7, or a person that's going from 6 to 7, or a person going 5 to 6.
So, but it could be an adjustment all the way up the scale.
Well, yes, and that's extremely expensive.
Okay.
As we saw the last time with the paying classification plan, it was about $5 million. So Dr. Whitney's done some great things with trying to give the flat raise and to try to bring things together, and we tried to put a couple of $100s between each one of those to try to help make that difference a little bit because they were the same. So when we hopefully do another paying classification study, we can help the folks that are helping us do that fix the scale once and for all, make it more even among the steps, and work the scale so that it
How long do you
becomes a real
think,
scale.
I mean, where are we in the, when is this going to be fixed?
As far as the compensation plan, one of the things we plan to do is, for this year's budget, we hope to be able to either get the support of the city council to allow us to do help us pay for another compensation plan. When we looked at this before, some of you may recall, there was compression. That's what you're describing, compression. So we were able to break that up some, but we haven't addressed it completely. To address it completely, as Ms. Forsman said, is going to be very costly. It's not to suggest that we don't think it needs to be. I mean, I think in some instances, one would think it should be the same amount of a difference between every step, a certain amount. Trying to do that now would be very costly. But it is something that needs to be addressed. But I think that, among with some other salaries, we're looking at what needs to be addressed when we do the compensation plan, if not this year, the following year, which, if you may recall, the last time we did one, they did recommend that we revisit that every 5 years, I believe it was.
Yeah.
When we give our raise 2.25%, when we give that raise, the step is built in to that percent,
Right.
correct?
Mhm.
So that step is really considered, could be looked at as a cost of living. I mean, is that how the governor intended the 5% to include steps?
The governor's budget, or
No.
the budget that we receive, clearly states that when he gives a 5% raise, that every teacher should see a 5% increase, whether it's a cost of living or whether it's a step. But they should see, based on their salary that they had last year, well, it's over 2 years, it should be 5% higher. Now, keep in mind that last year, when we did the 3,000 across the board, the lowest percentage that any teacher received was 4.3%. So when we add that 2.25%,
2.5.
2.5, we're over the 5%, so we have met what the governor has suggested, or what's included in
So,
State superintendent's memo that came out, the
Yeah.
language in that clearly says salary increase. It does not say step, it does not say cost of living, clearly says just salary increase. And when we look at our neighbors and what they're doing around us, we've not found anyone that is not doing it the same way we're doing it, which is
To include the step.
A percentage. They take whatever they're on step this year, and if you look at the salary scale and you look at someone who's on step A or step 0, and they're making $42,677, you would take that number and multiply by 102.25%, and that would be the salary that would appear on step 1 next year.
because I think, like, for instance, when that $3,000 raise was given, the percent increase was all over the map.
Right.
And,
Right.
and so that turned out to be, I mean, for the people at the top, it was in the 2% range, and then
Lowest.
2.19, I think.
Now, 4.32 was the lowest percentage raise given last year at the very top of the scale.
And we had discussion at at my teacher's advisory about the flat versus the percentage. And you may recall, one of the reasons we recommended a percentage was simply because teachers brought that very issue up. As the percentages are varied, they said, well, let's alternate. Have you considered alternating 1 year do a flat increase and the next year do a percentage? And that's why I proposed a percentage.
I'd like to say a couple of things. I've been on this board for quite a while, and Ms. Forsman has done some astronomical things for us. We've been through some very difficult times. I think some of us can remember quite vividly some of those, and we have had studies to predict what we need to pay our employees and all types of things. And we have made every attempt, and Dr. Whitney has made every attempt to do as much as possible with what we are given. And Ms. Forsman, I just want to say thank you to you, because you have done an astronomical job, and your staff, and you're understaffed. But
Staff is awesome.
you
Thank
maintain and you keep going, and you think of innovative ways to help us move forward. We cannot solve all these problems, and we have looked at that compression issue for many, many years, and if we could solve it, we would be glad to. I'm quite sure, but it takes a lot of money, like Ms. Forsman said. So we are going to continue to work together, and we're going to move forward. That's the way I see it. Thank you, Ms.
I
Forsman.
think you're great.
Thank you, Ms. Forsman.
Thank you.
Next, we have the calendar of special events.
Yes, I won't read through those items. We have a lot, in the springtime of an academic year, there's a lot going on. We have everything from spring break next week, superintendent's art show, as I mentioned before. We've also included the appreciation days as well. You can look at that. And that concludes the superintendent's report, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And now we will move to the next item, consent agenda. If you'll look over that. This is an action item.
Madam Chair, I'd like to pull some things out of the consent agenda.
Yes.
I'd like to pull out the track team field trip. I would like to pull out the course proposals and the summer committees.
Which other ones did you say?
Those three. Summer committees.
Oh, the summer committees.
Right, summer curriculum committees, sorry.
Do you have questions concerning
Mhm.
that? You do?
Okay, question?
You have questions concerning?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
With them?
Yeah.
Okay. The track team. This is from Kings Fork High School.
Yes.
And is asking the whole team to go on a field trip to the state meet. I don't think we have a practice where we just, if teams earn their way there, they go to state. But I believe this is not that they've qualified for state. I don't know what the field trip, but we don't I mean, I'm sure the baseball team would like to go to state and just watch the tournament too, even if they don't qualify, or the girls' softball team, I'm sure, would like to take a field trip to the state meet. So I need clarification on why Kings Fork
Well,
track team would be going. If we're not going to be equitable, why would they go if they don't have anyone participating?
It was a request by the coach and the school. I supported that request. I don't know if it's a matter of, I can't say whether it's a matter of letting them see what it's about, letting them see all about it. I don't know. I do support it. I don't know if any of my staff members have any more information regarding it. But as it stands right, okay, go ahead, Dr. Rice.
But typically what they'll do is put more athletes on there than qualify because they have to submit it in advance, and so you don't always know. So they cushion it in advance, but it's only going to be the students that should qualify.
Okay.
Yeah. But if we know differently, then we can, that are eligible to compete.
Okay, so it will be, in the end,
It should be the athletes that are
just the
eligible to
athletes
compete.
that qualify for state.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Course proposals.
Yes.
I noticed that. I'm just making a suggestion.
Okay.
I noticed that both, especially in the history department, that the history titles haven't changed for probably maybe 60-some years. I mean, they're sort of still titled the way they were titled in my course book, and I think that we have less SOLs coming up for history, and I would love to see some diversity, some things with civics and politics, civics and, looking at the history of a lot of things. And I'd like us to consider, looking at semester classes so that kids could really get a diversity. They could pick history topics that they might really be interested in, history of the American military, history of, the suffrage movement up to today. I mean, let's get some diversity in our history classes, perhaps, so that kids are excited. World History 1 and World History 2. If we don't have SOLs attached, maybe we could look at diversifying and looking at some semester classes to get kids rotating through.
Consider that. Generally, when new courses are proposed, it's an interest that a teacher or a school or sometimes what students have expressed. So that certainly isn't to be ruled out.
Right.
I think there is I don't know if there's any other information.
It would be great if the teachers could work with the history people and see what their interests are.
Sure.
Reach out to our history supervisor is here, and I'm sure she's also taking note of the concern and the feedback, and we'll certainly take that into consideration.
Because I think they have their favorite topics in history, and if we could rotate kids to each semester, that would give them a lot of diversity. So now, without the constraints of the SOL, now might be the time to get a 21st century look to some of our English and history classes. Just a suggestion.
Thank you.
And then the last thing is
Dr. Harrison,
yeah.
on the course proposals.
Yes, sir.
My concern is these are coming to us tonight. My guess is students have finished pre-registering for their classes for next year. Were these options available to them when they registered?
They were available for simple tallies, and part of the reason for the timing, particularly with the CTE courses, we have to follow the VDOE schedule, and we have to wait until the courses are approved by the VDOE before we can actually present them to the board each year for approval. So CTE courses typically will come to the board later than we traditionally do our other course proposals in the year.
And there was a discrepancy in the amount of credit awarded for some of the courses at the College and Career Academy at Pruden. That some of them were 1.5 credits and some of them were 1. Could you explain that, please?
Actually, if I may, I'd like to call up Andre Skinner, our coordinator of career and technical education. He would probably be the best person to explain that discrepancy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greetings. To address that question, Mr. Mitnick, that was one course in its utility-heavy construction because we proposed to have a second year added to the first year in which it could be completed in one section in one school calendar year. So instead of that 3 credits that they would be in that class for 420 hours, this particular class, they can get completed parts 1 and 2 in 420 hours, which is one calendar year. So because of 140 hours per credit, they will actually have 420 for that complete year, which equals 3 credits.
So they're finishing 2 years of a course in 1 year?
Correct. So they'll be considered a completer for utility-heavy construction in 1 year, having been taught the curriculum of both utility-heavy construction 1 and utility-heavy construction 2. And the state allows for that 420 hours for the 2 courses combined. Kind of connects with the new scheduling.
All right, thank you.
10-4.
And summer curriculum committee
Yes.
work. This would be with science. It didn't really say what the curriculum committee work was going to do, but science curriculum has been the same since 2010. So I hope by now we have an aligned curriculum.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So in October, right, new science standards were approved. I hope that we use our curriculum work this summer to look at those new standards as we begin our crossover period. And there's a huge component of technology. There's a huge component of technology and engineering that are now integrated into the science, and I think it's going to take us a plan. We've been sort of piecemealing in science in terms of data loggers, and we have all sorts of different systems, and now that we're solid into Chromebooks, we really need to consider what data loggers. I know the data loggers at Kings Fork would not work with Chrome, so I hope that this curriculum work will look forward and start building the new coursework and inquiry. Do we need some outdoor research areas? Some greenhouses, maybe? Hydroponic, Dr. Bird, greenhouses. But some research areas, because inquiry is a huge piece coming up. So it didn't say what the curriculum work was, but I hope that we're looking forward and working with the new standards.
Absolutely, and you'll be pleased to know that argument-driven inquiry is a significant focus for our science department, and we are looking forward to providing more professional development and support to teachers in the area of inquiry so that we can have more scientific investigation incorporated in all of our courses. But our science department works very hard on alignment, and that is always a key focus during curriculum writing.
So it'll be on alignment again with the 2010?
Alignment with the new standards.
The new standards, great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and definitely, I mean, technology is a big piece now, and I think that's going to take a coordinated effort to be able to bring our science curriculum and standards and expectations of what kids are doing. And so I'm glad you're looking forward.
Absolutely.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
the input. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Board members will please vote. Motion carried.
Next, under unfinished business, we have ordinance 18/19-58. This is an action item.
Madam Chairman, my question would be, based on the information that Deputy Commonwealth Attorney Wall gave us, that the state is in the process of developing this memorandum of understanding, should we hold off on approving or adopting this proposal at this time? an opinion from Mr. Waller or anyone would be appreciated.
I can comment on that. One of the things with model memorandums of understanding is that you never know exactly when that model is going to come. It may be a year from now, could be 2 years from now. The other thing is that it's only going to be a model, which means that school divisions have the option to adopt it as it comes down, or school divisions can modify it. The policy that is in front of you balances public safety and student rights. And I think that is something that everyone should be concerned about. The other thing that the policy does is that it addresses interviews by law enforcement officials for school-related incidents. What it prohibits is interviews by law enforcement authority for non-school related incidents. The other thing that it does is that it gives to the school the authority to contact parents before the child is interviewed. Granted, the police may have that same internal operating procedure, but these students are in the care of Suffolk Public Schools. And so I believe that the school division should ensure that parents are notified. I think that if a parent is not notified and their child is interviewed, I think the parent is not going to be upset with the police. The parent is going to be upset with the school. So I think all of those things should be weighed. Now, Ms. Walls made reference to a case out of Florida. However, in my memorandum to the board, as part of the report coming from the Policy Review Committee, referenced a case from the Virginia Court of Appeals. And this is what the Virginia Court of Appeals said in 1988. We adhere to the view that it is desirable to have a parent, counsel, or some other interested adult or guardian present when the police interrogate a juvenile. And it is even more desirable to have an interested adult present when a juvenile waives fundamental constitutional rights and confesses to a serious crime. Now, that's what the Virginia Court of Appeals said in 1988, and that has not changed.
Ma'am?
Yes.
One of the things that I want to say when I saw this was that we have had a policy in place. This is just amending a policy that we already had, which required parents to be called. Is that not?
Correct.
Parents to be called, and then if the parent is not present, then the teacher or administrator must be in the presence of the child.
The original language of the policy indicated that when it becomes necessary for any law enforcement officer to interrogate a student on school premises during the school day, whether as a suspect or witness, the principal must be contacted immediately before any questioning takes place. The principal or the principal's designee makes a reasonable effort to contact the parent or guardian. That was the former policy.
And that had been in place for, as far as I know, it's been in every school system that I've been in, having served as a principal. I had to be present if the police came to question the child. I had to get the parent. If I could not get the parent, I had to be present. And that's in 4 different states in West Germany for DOD. So I'm not sure, I do want to make it clear, this is a new policy we're creating. We're just changing a policy that we had in place.
This policy was first adopted in January 1995.
All right. So I'm ready to make a motion that we approve.
I second.
Board members will please vote. Motion carried.
Under new business, we have ordinance 18/19-70, which deals with school board committees and boards. This is a first reading for informational purposes. Are there any questions or concerns or comments?
Yes, Madam Chair. Under the description of the pupil personnel committee, there are two items that I'd like to call to your attention. Under the items that the pupil personnel committee reviews, the athletic waivers has been left out, and that needs to be included in there. And secondly, the wording could be misconstrued to indicate that all discipline cases involving suspensions greater than 10 days are to be heard by the pupil personnel committee. And I don't believe that is the intent, but the way it's worded, that's how it could be misconstrued. So I don't know if adding the word may in there may be make it reference what we truly wanted to say.
Dr. Rice, do you have anything? You in agreement? Yes. Okay.
What we can do is that we can get with Dr. Rice and get some understanding of what the wording should be in terms of what the practice is.
Okay, thank you.
Right, this is the first reading, so we will revise and come back for next month. Next item, public speakers on non-agenda topics. I believe we have a group from the Girl Scout Juniors, their leader, Amy Ford, if they'll come forward.
Good evening. We are juniors in Girl Scout Troop 357. We are asking for 30 minutes of recess for Suffolk Public Schools. The first reason we are asking for more recess is because it helps students academically, socially, emotionally, and as well as physically. Currently in Suffolk Public Schools, we are supposed to have 20 minutes of recess per day. However, the American Academy of Pediatrics believes that recess is crucial and it's important to a child's development. American Academy of Pediatrics believe that the recess should not be withheld because of academic reasons or for punishment due to poor testing or misbehavior.
Hello, my name is Tori Grooms. In 2009, the New York Times published a study stating 11,000 third graders who had more recess had better classroom behavior. Arizona teachers in this study have seen better results like less bad behavior and better test scores. The same students will have more time to socialize on the playground, so they will have less of a reason to talk in the classroom. There also isn't any documented evidence that test scores go up by keeping kids in class longer. Recess helps with negotiation skills, leadership skills, improves memory, develops brain connections, and are less fidgety in class.
My name is Miriam Leslie. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention recommends at least 1 hour of physical activity daily for kids. Research also shows that people who exercise think better. Even though Suffolk Public School elementary students receive 1 class period of gym a week, most of us have homework after school or extracurricular activities, and we are unable to spend time outside. Recess would help us meet that goal. The American Academy of Pediatrics also says more recess can lower the risk of obesity in students. Thank you for taking time to listen to our argument, and we hope that you consider changing the amount of recess for Suffolk Public Schools. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll let Dr. Whitney
If
address.
I may, I know we don't generally respond to
Yeah.
speakers, but I would like to personally commend the ladies for doing their research and presenting. I'm truly an advocate for additional recess. In fact, Dr. Harris and I have had some conversations already as to how we can do it without extending the day. I repeat, without extending the day.
Right.
But looking at how we might be able to integrate some content areas that will relieve some time and perhaps give more. It's something that we're certainly willing to explore, so we'll keep you all posted.
You did a great job.
Thank you so much for your comments, and keep up the enthusiasm. That's what's needed in the city of Suffolk. Thank you very much, ladies.
Madam Chair, may I have one item that I didn't speak of on the consent agenda? Excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry, we have another speaker. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
we have one
Oh,
more.
I'm sorry, go
We
ahead.
have one more person, Joyce Hall. Yes.
Madam Chairman, members of the school board, in all my getting, I need to get an understanding. My name is Joyce Hall, and I'm a parent according to the district Title I Family Engagement Policy. When we could not recognize behaviors that were being reported to us that were occurring with our student, we sought information about who and how we could support him. Beginning sometime early in 2016, 2017 school year, our student began to bring home misconduct referrals that were not characteristic of that student. We contacted the teacher, school principal, assistant principal. We went to the school board to talk about how we could help to get more details about exactly what was going on with our student. He is important to us. In addition, we saw other students that were participating and having some of the same type problems. We also had the retired school psychiatrist to go in to be an advocate for our student, and the things that she mentioned were that she could see some of the very same inequality being dealt with this student that she didn't see happening to other students. We were not convinced with what the school system was telling us, so we hired an attorney. And we soon discovered that the policy that was given to us, they couldn't talk to us about another student. They can't talk to us about what was giving us very much details. That was untrue. When we got the information from our attorney from our students' school folder, we found that not only had they talked with the teacher, some of the other persons in the administration, they also sent us a threat. This practice of allowing persons to call or write complaints not to be identified and exact punishment on the student the following day is frustrating to us. We can't help our students if we do not get details and know the information to help them. Our attorney worked with the school board attorney, and they came to the conclusion that the practice of having persons call in a complaint on a student, making some type of information that they shouldn't be using about that student was not a policy of the Suffolk City School Board, of the Suffolk City school system. That was worth the money that we had to pay. We couldn't get information at the lowest level in the school system. It took us almost 2 years to get this little bit of information. So what we've determined and decided to do is to call in other folk that could possibly help us, that probably has other information about how to handle, how to address how to work with a student to make it so that every student can succeed. The strategy sent us to remedy this process is not acceptable. Why it's not acceptable? Because it only addresses the student discipline again. It only addresses the student discipline. It did not talk about the system that had been able to be created in the school that allowed this student to be shamed, to be dishonored, disrespected. So our way forward is simply to expose the practice. We're going to expose those who participated in the practice, and we're going to expose the intent of the practice, which is to bully and to dominate. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your comment. And now we will
Yes.
move on.
Yes, and I apologize. Earlier during the consent agenda, we did have the a lease agreement, I believe, with the Children's Center. And initially, we had placed in the agenda the fee, the rental fee would be, I believe it was over $800. We've since, my recommendation is to reduce that to about $350, $357. The Children's Center is a nonprofit organization. If we need to take this out, because I know you've already voted, without me pointing that was a change from the original document, we're certainly able to do that.
Do I have a clarification? Is that for this coming year or the following year?
Next year, next September. or
September.
August, yes.
I move that we amend the report and accept it.
Second.
Board members will please vote. Motion carried.
Next, we have business by board members, and we'll start with Ms. Jenkins.
Thank you. First of all, thanks to everyone that's here this evening and those who spoke and gave us some very good information. I just want to say that this month we've had a lot of things, activities to go to, and we just had our Tyler Regional dinner forum on Monday or Tuesday and Monday, and it was very, very informative. Every time as a new board member, I get a chance to go to all these trainings like we did in Charlottesville yesterday. It just amazes me of the duties and the things that we do have on our agenda as a board member, and it makes it even more exciting, the things that we are capable of doing to benefit our children and our school board as a whole. As always, I thank all of you who work with the school board. We cannot do it without you, and you all do a tremendous job, and just thank you and keep up the good work.
Mr. Mitnick?
Just one item. I represent the school board on the Access College Foundation, and on the 26th of March, we had a Suffolk Recognition Luncheon where we recognized the donors who give to the Suffolk program for the Access College Foundation. On April 30th, the Access College Foundation will be celebrating College Commitment Day, and seniors from our 3 high schools will be participating at the Ted Constant Center in Norfolk at ODU. Thank you.
Ms. Mayo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sure that you were aware that the month of March was designated as Music in Our Schools Month and Youth Art Month. I had the pleasure of attending some of the activities to celebrate our music and art programs. I attended the All-City Band and All-City Chorus concerts. Our middle school and high school musicians did an outstanding job. They were commended by the guest conductors who worked with them. They had just a few hours to put all of this music together, music that they probably had not seen before, to present those concerts for us. The guest band directors, Mr. Bynum and Mr. Mosley, commented on the discipline and the musicianship of our students, and they attributed this to the directors. So kudos to our high school choral directors, our middle school choral directors, our middle school band directors, and our high school band directors. Also, I attended the Youth Art Month activity over at Nassaman River on March the 30th, and our student artists were well represented from all of our schools. And in addition, this activity allowed time for viewing the students' artwork as well as demonstrations. The children who attended this activity had an opportunity to make art, and it was a very festive atmosphere. The final event that I attended was the Talented Music Stars concert this past Tuesday at Nassaman River High School. Again, we were wowed with the musicianship of our elementary students. Accolades to our elementary music teachers for their dedication and hard work. The students performed various vocal selections and played the kazoo and the recorder for us. The program ended with a wonderful tribute to our military and to our country. And of course, you know, anyone that knows me, music has been an integral part of my life, as I was a music educator and still very much involved in music. So our music and art programs in our school system are on the right track, and we certainly need to applaud our music educators and our art teachers for the fine job that they're doing. And we want to thank them for their hard work.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Mr. Riddick?
Well, on Monday, I had the pleasure of attending the regional conference at Fred Cherry Middle School. It was very informative. I got to meet with a bunch of our state senators and representatives and been able to pick their brain about a lot of policies that affect our children here in Suffolk. I just want to say it's been an excellent and rewarding experience thus far, being on a school board, being able to represent the constituents who've given me an opportunity to represent them, being able to work with over 200 youth in the city of Suffolk through various tutoring programs and seeing them make notable progress. I'm just honored to be a part of a great body, and I look forward to us moving forward in the right direction. Continue to move forward in the right direction. Thank you.
Mr. Riddick. Ms. Story?
I had an opportunity to attend the Community in Schools event out at the Cedar Creek Golf Club, and Principal Avery did a wonderful job of bringing her Elephants Fork students out. She was fantastic with them. We had people in the community sponsored Elephants Fork students so they could go out. They had an opportunity to get a little golf lesson, and they just represented Suffolk Public Schools very well. And so kudos to Principal Avery for that. I think it was just very good. I want to give a shout out to John Thompson. He is one of our out at Prudence CCAP. He does our building trades, and he is getting ready to retire, I hear, but he has done it for a long time, and he has again had students qualify for a state tournament in building. And so I will be attending that on Saturday, and they have 5 hours that they get plans, and they have to build according to the plans and have it done in 5 hours. And I can't wait to see how this goes. It's at the Virginia Beach Convention Center, and he also has someone out there in electrical work. So I've never attended a state competition with something like that, and I look forward, and kudos to him for getting kids all the way to the state level. And then I'd like to say April was also School Library Month. And I want to acknowledge our librarians who do a fantastic job, and they really supply a valuable resource to both teachers and to students. And so I want to give a shout out to the librarians and thank them for all the hard work that they do. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Dr. Buck?
I had the opportunity to attend the United Way breakfast. I'm sorry. And to hear the recognition that we received for our partnership ability, for the work that we've done cooperatively with business and community leaders to have our Project LEAP and our Project Launch during the summer. The leaders that I sat with, and I sat with some of the leaders, some of the business leaders and coordinators that work with United Way in this project, they always talk to me about the professionalism of the superintendent and the staff members who work with them from Suffolk Public Schools. And of course, it's always exciting to me to look at our results. I know that I'm a results-oriented person, and I looked at all of the wonderful things that we are able to accomplish with children during the summer. And I just applaud you for what you do, Dr. Whitney, and for what you all do as members of our staff. Just keep on doing what you're doing because you're doing an excellent job, and people all over recognize it.
Thank you, Doctor.
Madam Chair, if I could interject.
Yes.
I forgot one thing.
Okay.
I attended the annual Career Expo at the Hilton today, and kudos to the coordinator, Andre Skinner, for the outstanding Career Expo. Over 30 businesses were present. I saw students interviewing, and it was a wonderful atmosphere. So our CTE program is in great hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mayo. As you can see, we've got a lot of wonderful things going on. Ms. Jenkins did speak about and I believe Mr. Riddick about the event on Monday night when we hosted the VSBA Tidewater Regional. That was a wonderful event, gave our school system an opportunity to showcase a brand-new school, Colonel Fred Cherry. There were a lot of people involved in that. The chorus from Nansemond River High School under Dr. Neighbors did an excellent job. I want to commend them. Mr. Woodis from Nansemond River High School had the orchestra, jazz ensemble orchestra there. They did an outstanding job. I heard so many good comments from the people that attended. I think they were kind of like in awe of some of the things we're doing. I want to commend the student guides who escorted people on tours of the school. And I believe Dr. Bird's daughter was one of those. And she asked me politely if I would like to go on a tour. But anyway, the students were very involved. We also were served by the CCAP students, the culinary class from CCAP. And, of course, I'm sure Brian Williams and his staff helped a lot with that as well. It was a wonderful meal, and even though it was chicken, we thoroughly enjoyed it. But I know there are a lot of people that had a hand in it. One other person that I want to particularly thank, too, who was there, was our current mayor, Linda Johnson. She attended, and she told me she thoroughly enjoyed it. She likes to see when our city is beaming, and she said we were truly magnificent that night. And, of course, she was on the forum panel, and I think she enjoyed that with the other state legislators, senators, and delegates. And I can't say enough about Dr. LaToya Harrison. Her smiling face was everywhere, and she was trying to keep everything going as usual. And I appreciate, Dr. Harrison, what you did for that event and coordinating it, but I know you had a lot of help from a lot of different people. But we really do appreciate what you did. It was magnificent. One other thing, we're getting ready to have spring break. I know we're all anticipating that. Everybody's smiling, right? And I want to wish all of our employees and students a very safe and relaxing spring break. I hope we all can get a little breath of fresh air, and maybe the pollen will dissipate, and we'll all be in better spirits, we hope. But anyway, that's all I have, and now I'll turn it over to Dr. Whitney.
Thank you. I do have a statement I'll just read. It's with mixed emotions that I officially announce my retirement from public education effective September 1, 2019. On this date, it will mark roughly 30 years of serving students, staff, teachers, and parents in various roles. Over the last 9 years as your superintendent, I have had the opportunity to be a part of many decisions that have improved Suffolk community. I'm most thankful for the opportunity to develop quality relationships over the years with students, teachers, staff, parents, community leaders, and elected officials. When I began my tenure in 2010, we faced major budget challenges. However, with the focus on continuous improvement, we prevailed and grew in many areas as a school division, adding the third specialty high school program, community service graduation requirements, a focus on STEM education, a thorough classification and compensation plan, and an award-winning elementary summer school program. In addition to integrating the use of Chromebooks, developing a teacher supply store, an effective strategic planning guide, and building 3 new schools. And of course, improved student performance. Each of these initiatives and accomplishments was possible due to the effective school and community relations we have maintained to truly make every child a star. This has been a rewarding experience, and I appreciate the trust and relationships I've experienced with all school board members. While I do have mixed emotions, I do look forward to my next chapter. Thank you for entrusting me in this role. With gratitude and appreciation, Darren Whitney. Thank you.
But I'd like to say personally, I think I said it to you before, I have been involved in Suffolk Public Schools for many, many years, and everybody's picture that's on that, roster in the superintendent's office, I either worked for or served on the board with. So I've known every superintendent that's on that list, and there are a lot of very magnificent people and some mediocre people, I'm going to be honest, and some that made a lot of innovations, But I think you've been with us 21 years in Suffolk Public Schools. Your wife has been a part of Suffolk Public Schools. Your daughter graduated from Nance Monroeville High School. You've been a teacher here, an assistant principal.
Assistant principal. Started teaching somewhere else.
Assistant principal, supervisor, all types of jobs leading up to where you finally arrived. And you're an outstanding leader, educator. Words can't say enough.
Thank you.
You've received a lot of accolades along the way. I think year before last you received accolade for being superintendent for the region, and that speaks volumes.
Thank you.
And personally, I will miss you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And I told him he's grown so much. He has grown so much in the time I've been on this board. And anyone else have comments?
I think I'll take this privilege this time as the vice chair. Let me just say to you, as one that I didn't train, even though I've trained some, you've done a stellar job. You really have. And I'm really proud of what you've done, of what we've accomplished. I cannot say that I knew the other superintendents because I did not. I knew Dr. Liverman just because we worked on a committee together, but I'd never worked with him as closely as I've worked with you. Of course, I wish you well, but I told you that we don't necessarily have to vote yes on this. You do know that, don't you? And that I have to make the recommendation. You know that, too. I'd like to say to you that I've seen you carry yourself in a professional manner, even when the local newspaper wrote some articles that were not true, indicating that you were paid this wonderful salary that we could not pay you. You worked for us. I saw you wait 3 years to get your raise when everybody else got theirs. I saw you give back one because I chided you about that, not accepting the raise that you had earned with the state because people had been so ugly and knew at the time that they were not being honest with what they were saying. I just want to say that you're a consummate professional, and I know that you'll do well wherever you go in whatever you do.
I just want to say that the short time working with you has been great. Every time that I'm in your presence, I feel the love that you have for what you do, for the school, for the employees, and this is what you call going out on top, because you have done some amazing things. No one will be able to fill your shoes. They're going to have to bring their own and, work their way up. And like I said, I pray that whatever your desire is, that God grants it to you.
Dr. Whitney, also, I would like to thank you for your dedication and for your hard work. I have known you for some time. I'm sorry that I didn't get the opportunity to work with you as the superintendent, but I know your work ethic, your professionalism, your dedication to the educational process, your attention to detail, your organizational skills. All of these are excellent characteristics which make you you. You are a very unique person. You've done an outstanding job with our school system, and we have moved forward under your leadership. And for that, we are grateful, and we thank you for your service.
Dr. Whitney, thank you for what you've done for the school district and the school board. Just since I've come on, you've always been very honest. I felt you've been a very, very honest individual, and I really appreciate that. And I'm very surprised. So I want you to enjoy whatever is next. I know when I got out of education, I didn't, this was next, but I think you too are going to find something that is going to be just great for your family. We will miss you. We will. I had, I think, just 2 years with Dr. Liverman, but otherwise, you've always been my superintendent. And I wish you the very, very best with whatever you do. I hope you do some teaching at the university level, if that's your choosing, because I think you would really help shape our next administrators in education, and that would be excellent. So, best of luck.
Dr. Whitney, I'd just like to add my thanks for all that you've done, and to thank you personally, because I always found that although I had a myriad of questions, no question was too big or too small to receive your full attention, and I've always appreciated that as a board member, and I wish you well in your future, whatever it brings.
Dr. Whitney, to those who don't know, Dr. Whitney was my principal in elementary school. He met me before. He met me when I would have needed the OSS Center. And one thing I could always say about Dr. Whitney, and I love giving people their flowers as often as I can, but one thing I can say about Dr. Whitney, he didn't judge me based off of what people had said. He didn't judge me based off of what other people's perceptions were. Dr. Whitney is the model example of what all principals should be like in a perfect world. Dr. Whitney, one day I was suspended off the bus, and
I don't recall, but go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Whitney. I was suspended off the bus, and I entered Elephant's Fork doors, and Dr. Whitney caught me in the hallway before I could make it past the mural of the elephant that awaits you as soon as you come in. He caught me before I could come in, and he pulled me to the side, and he used a word that I have never heard at that time before. He called me buddy. He explained what his buddies had to do to remain his buddies. And he told me that good grades and all the other things I had to maintain, no more bus referrals. And over the years, every time I would see Dr. Whitney from elementary, middle, high school, college, when I got into fatherhood, when I started the organization, even now, Dr. Whitney has always been this person I could go to, and he would give great advice. Not often what I want to hear, but he would tell me straightforward, and I could count on him to be honest about it. It's bittersweet. You have mixed emotions, and I'm over here toiling, trying not to be emotional, because one thing that I always wanted to do, being that child in school who people would prejudge you, I understood more so what it's like to show those who gave you a chance that your risk was not in vain. And I'm glad Dr. Liverman wasn't able to see where I am now, but I'm glad that you are able to see it. I'm glad to say that you were very instrumental in the change, along with some other wonderful faces out here. You can't retire right now. But Dr. Whitney, I just really want to say thank you for being you. I have watched you through the years, and I'm just turned 29, so I watched you through the years, and you have been a great role model to pattern after, and I just want to say thank you.
Enough, I guess, said. We'll move to the personnel report. Dr. Buck.
All right. I move that we approve the personnel report with the addition of the retirement/resignation and the leave request.
Second the motion.
Board members will please vote. Motion carried.
And the pupil personnel report.
I move that we accept the pupil personnel report as written.
Second the motion.
Board members will please vote. Motion carried.
And this meeting is adjourned.